So as Jim's setting up here, many of you know Jim, so he probably needs very little introduction, since for 30 years or more, he has been working at the BCRC, and we are so pleased that he is here today to share with us some of the many projects that they are working on throughout the county. And he was nominated and moved into being executive director in 2011. Many of you also know that he is married to Leslie Addison, who works at United Counseling Service. He lives in North Bennington. He has 2 children, 4 stepchildren, and 6 grandchildren. And he's looking forward to...
I don't look that old, do I?
I know, he really doesn't, does he? And I'm going to read what he wrote down here. He's looking forward to road bowling season.
There you go. At least one person knows what that is.
That's right. Others might need an explanation around that, but give a nice welcome to Jim. Thank you.
Scrap the presentation, just talk about road bowling.
Thank you, Betsy. Really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for the opportunity to talk with you, meet with you today. I really enjoy the opportunity to come out and talk a little bit about the Regional Commission and the work that we do, because we do kind of work in the background. We work with all the towns and villages in Bennington County, but very often it's nothing that makes the headlines. Sometimes it is, usually not for bad reasons. And so it's really, I think, helpful so that you know what we do and you can tell folks what we do and when we might be helpful. So, let's see. Oh, I think all I have to do is turn it on. Right? There's a plan B, I think, for changing this thing.
Well, there you go. You got to the mission.
Look at that. All right, but better not push any other buttons. Okay, so yeah, I won't read that, but that was to prompt me to tell you that the Regional Commission was created by 17 towns and villages in Bennington County back a little over 50 years ago, and we're one of 11 regional commissions in the state of Vermont. Our basic mission is to serve the communities in the region, which, as I said, amounts to most of Bennington County. We also serve as a liaison between those communities and groups and organizations locally here in Bennington County and state agencies and departments, and really try to help translate what's going on in Montpelier and to an extent in Washington to back down to the local level and bring those programs and services to people. Let's see. No. Oh, okay. All right. And I apologize for the focus, but that's probably not too important either. So that's kind of what that's an organizational chart, and that's what the BCRC looks like. And I thought it would be helpful to put it up just to highlight a couple things. One is that the commission is really run by volunteer commissioners representing the municipalities in the region and a number of interest group commissioners who are elected or appointed. And most recently, and I think most significantly in recent years, the commission, the BCRC, has formed a real formal relationship with the Bennington County Industrial Corporation, which is the regional development corporation for the region, as we're the Regional Planning Commission for the region. And we're really now functioning as the Regional Planning and Development Agency for Bennington County, which is the way I think probably it always should have been. Planning, long-term planning, a vision for the future, following right through to implementation, working with our partners in economic development. It really has made a big difference, I think, helping to coordinate things that way. We have about 10 staff people now. Sometimes they come and go, but in addition to me, our financial director is Stacy Eggsware. She's been with us for a few years and has done a great job. And our community and economic development director, who many of you know, is Bill Colvin, who has been working with us for many years. We also have in the economic development area Jonathan Cooper, who's who works really directly with a lot of folks in the BCIC. Our environmental program manager, his name is Jim Henderson, and he does a lot of work in brownfields redevelopment and water quality. Municipal planning program manager is a young woman named Catherine Briers, who's really done just a bang-up job working with towns on town plans and bylaw updates and special planning studies. Regional transportation program is run by Mark Anders in our office. Solid waste program is run by Michael Batcher, and that's a relationship not with the solid waste folks, not unlike the BCIC one, where the Bennington County Solid Waste Alliance retains the services of the regional commissions and provide those services. And the emergency management program manager is Allison Stroll. And we have a Vista who's working with us full-time, or volunteering with us full-time, named Madison Kramer. And she's just been doing a great job as well. So real quick, because people always ask, well, what do you do and where does your money come from? And feel free to ask questions as I run through these quickly. I hope you have some questions. But our community and economic development program, that is driven largely by the work with the Bennington County Industrial Corporation, the Regional Development Corporation, and they receive a grant funding through the Agency of Commerce and Community Development every year. A big initiative, obviously, over the last 3 years and going into the future for a while, is our work with the Bennington Redevelopment Group, where we're providing some project management services for the redevelopment of the Putnam block. A big initiative, and I'm sure many of you are aware, is for the first time Bennington County is trying to have a formal comprehensive economic development strategy developed under guidelines from the U.S. Economic Development Administration. That's a joint effort with the Windham County, folks over in Windham County, to create a Southern Vermont SEDS, as they say, that should open up a lot of new opportunities for economic development in the region. We also do special economic development planning work for towns, and in the last few years we've had some workforce development grants, and that's kind of gone away, but we just got a new grant through the Department of Labor to start running an internship program. So, let's see if there's a backward way. No, there is one. I got it down now. So transportation planning, we get an annual grant from the Agency of Transportation, and that provides us with the ability to make sure that state transportation initiatives are responsive to local needs and interests, at least to the best that we're able to do that. We were at a meeting last night at Bennington College where they were talking about redesign, reconstruction of the intersection at the Bennington College, Silk Road, Madison Road, messy intersection area. We've been talking about that for 25 years, actually. So this is how long things take in that realm. We also do a lot with bicycle and pedestrian project development, and there's actually a lot of bicycle and pedestrian projects in the works right now, believe it or not. So hopefully they'll start being built in the next year or so. And other transportation modes, like we've worked extensively with people to get that Vermont Shires Connector van service running to connect over to Albany and the Amtrak train station. And we also do provide project management services for some local transportation projects. And a big initiative lately is helping towns with their municipal roads general permit work, which is basically all the towns in the state have to have a plan and then follow through on their plans to implement projects that will make sure that like runoff erosion and stuff from their roads doesn't adversely impact water quality, while at the same time hopefully making sure that the roads aren't damaged and washed away during major storm events. Emergency management. So, speaking of major storm events, Tropical Storm Irene was kind of a big wake-up call for everybody. It said, maybe we're not really planning ahead as effectively as we should and making sure our infrastructure and our buildings are ready to withstand future storms. So we do a lot of work with towns developing local emergency operation plans, so how to help people respond in the event of emergency. as well as hazard mitigation grants. And those are plans that basically set forth a list of priority projects in the community that will help the community help withstand and be resilient in the face of future disasters, not just flooding, but anything. It could be, railroad derailment or windstorm or ice storm or whatever. And then we work with the local emergency planning committee to help with oversight of all those programs. Environmental programs, I mentioned some of the work has kind of a crossover between work on local roads. This is an example of a road project, I think, in Sandgate that was developed to help maintain water quality and prevent damage to the road. There's ecosystem restoration grants, which tend to be very similar too. They're things like developing buffer strips along streams and between streams and roads to filter sediments and pollutants that would go into our waterways. There's a water quality grant that just kind of provides general planning services for towns working on water quality. And we've received, I think this is our third 3-year brownfields assessment grant from the Environmental Protection Agency. And those grants basically provide us with the ability to hire environmental consultants to look at properties that may have some level of environmental contamination and to identify what those contaminants are, develop remediation plans and reuse plans so those properties can return to productive use. This is just an example. Like in the we tend to work with other organizations that sometimes need an umbrella organization to help them administer grants and deliver services. So we've worked with the Alliance for Community Transformations over the last few years on Drug-Free Communities grant. Promise Community Grant was actually a lot more than that, as it turns out. A group called Catamount Connections that my daughter runs, so I'm proud of that one. But they received a grant through this Promise Community program that set up a number of family support service programs, and they moved into the basement of the old Masonic Hall building, and they also worked very hard on getting that splash pad project going, among a number of other things. So, the Lightning Jars group, we've worked with the local Lightning Jar Board of Directors to provide some administrative services to support that important co-working and entrepreneurial development space. And as I mentioned, we have a VISTA in the Southern Vermont Medical Center provides funding for a VISTA position at our organization and at the hospital. Our VISTA happens to be working very heavily in housing programs, so she's also working directly with the folks at Shires Housing and the Coalition for the Homeless. So, energy planning, those of you who know me at all know that this is what I do. We don't have much money for this, but we're trying to get more. Over the past few years, we've actually had a reasonable amount of funding from the Public Service Department that's gone away to develop regional and town energy plans. So we're kind of in the last year of that planning cycle, and now we're working to try to get into implementation of those things. We had a meeting just last week for people interested in forming town energy committees. We had almost 60 people come to the meeting, so I was very encouraged. There's a lot of enthusiasm out there about kind of taking the planning work we've done and getting volunteers to help deliver that at the local level. I mentioned solid waste. That is largely funded by the municipalities through the Bennington County Solid Waste Alliance, and there's some grants from the Department of Environmental Conservation that pay for things like household hazardous waste collection days and outreach on recycling and composting and programs like that. And this is kind of our historical point that we've done for as long as the Regional Commission's been around, and that's general municipal and regional planning. So we get a planning grant from the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. We get appropriations from municipalities, and some municipalities pass along special grants to do special planning studies. That we're working on a couple of those right now. And they cover everything from, this is a comprehensive regional plan that it covers everything from land use planning to transportation planning to environmental planning to economic development, as well as special focused planning studies and projects in all those areas, as well as I'm sure that at one time or another we've worked with every town in the region on developing their municipal plans and updating their plans and developing, implementing bylaws and doing special planning studies. So that funds those projects plus any of the other ones that go over budget, and they all do. That tends to pick up the balance of all those things. And I don't know. That was our budget for last year. So about $1.4 million. And the commission has grown a lot in the last 10 years or so. I think it's about doubled in staff and budget in that time. I'd say probably at least a third of that money is pass-through funding to different organizations and consultants. That's our operating budget. And that's my whole overview and background on MDCRC, so I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any. Ted?
I've been wondering whether the Putnam redevelopment project is going to start before Madison's new restaurant opens, or the other way around.
So I think that there may be a fundraising opportunity there if you want to take wagers on that one. So before I came here, I asked, there's a little inside information. I asked Bill Colvin, who's helping manage that project, just what the timeline is. Latest update. It keeps shifting, as I think projects do for any of these big development projects. Where there's, I think Bill said, like 45 different sources of funding to try to get this thing together. Bill says that they expect closing and to begin construction in early April. So I do not know what Madison's schedule is.
Just being a smart mouth.
So, what is going on with that intersection around Bennington College that a traffic light wouldn't solve?
So that's a great question. It's interesting. I noted at the meeting last night, I said, I've been around for a while. So I was at a meeting talking about that intersection at Bennington College 23 years ago. And we produced a study working with the Agency of Transportation at that time that had analysis of existing situations and possible alternatives, one of which was a traffic light. The traffic light doesn't really work very well there because of a couple things, the offset intersection and kind of the bad sight distance as you come around the bend there. And so it's maybe solves some problems, but it creates others, because if you come up on a light really quickly and it's red and it's green the other way, you have...
So like 279?
Yeah, you could have really serious high-speed accidents with a traffic light. So right now we're looking at the alternatives. We looked at the alternatives 23 years ago, and the alternative we came up with 23 years ago that the town, the regional commission, and the college all liked was a roundabout at that location. I like roundabout. Some people don't, but that was mentioned, I think, by most of the people at the meeting last night as being at least one likely candidate. But they're going to look at a whole range of alternatives. Yeah.
You're talking about bike paths and the like. Remember I go to the bottom of Harwood Hill, I go through the old railway bridge. And is there anything in plans with that? Either removing the bridge or turning it into a rail-to-trail bike path?
The rail line itself?
Yeah. I mean, the spur that goes from, I know Vermont Railway parks their tank cars, but from that point going forward, the whole spur into Bennington, I mean, assuming it's not going to be used again, is there any?
Yeah, there's a long history with that, and I asked it because it's an issue on Route 7A there too, under the bridge, because having ridden my bike through that underpass a number of times, I can tell you there's room for 2 cars. There's not room for 2 cars and 1 bicycle. So that is something to look at too. But that rail line itself, that's the old spur from North Bennington into Bennington, and it's been the subject of discussion for as long as I've been around because it seems like a natural for a rail trail. But while the state of Vermont owns that line, it's like a 99-year lease with Vermont Railway. And Vermont Railway is not inclined to give up their lease, which does not cost them. Basically, they pay 1 lease payment for all the stuff that they lease in Vermont. So It doesn't save them any money, by giving that up or make them any money. But the town has worked with Vermont Railway and the Agency of Transportation to get approval to use the part from that bridge into Bennington, into the old Bennington station, for pedestrian bike ped use in the future. And the town has funding, and has had funding for quite a few years, to develop a bike path from Bennington Station, basically out to across Northside Drive to the area by Molly Stark School. And then it wouldn't be too hard to extend it beyond that. Run into all sorts of challenges and problems with crossing and kind of where the rail line kind of comes out to Northside Drive, and then the railway's interest in kind of maintaining security along there. And we're hopeful that within the year, though, that'll at least that first 1.25 mile corridor will be built. Yeah. That's it.
So I know that you were very helpful in my small town of Sandgate when I was trying to bring in, internet. And we had the joy of putting a tower on top of a hill with ATVs. But we continue to struggle in our rural areas with cell phone. And going through your whole list, energy is certainly a new up and coming and important piece of it. But where does it fit into town plans these days in order to have connections and high-speed internet in some of our more rural areas?
Yeah, that's a great question, one everybody asks. There was a Southern Vermont Broadband Connectivity
Right.
Summit
Yep.
just a few weeks ago up at Mount Snow, with a focus on that in particular. And there are a number of underserved areas or unserved areas in our region. And it's a great question. I mean, what's the best way to deliver those services? Well, right now, I was meeting with someone from the Public Service Department yesterday, who's kind of behind a project to see what the potential is for wireless broadband service in some of the remote areas, and deployment of additional towers to get broadband to rural areas. So we're talking about working with them to really try to pin down where the best locations and needs for those things are. There's proposals in the legislature for funding, for infrastructure funding, as there always are. Every governor, that's one of their linchpins.
Easy
we're
thing
gonna
to say,
we're gonna
hard
serve
thing to
everybody
do.
in the state of Vermont with at least 100 megabytes per second, and within the next 2 years, and the next 2 years, the next 2 years. So it's an ongoing challenge. It's definitely on our radar screen. It's in every town plan that we write, and it's certainly going to form a significant part of that Southern Vermont Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. And hopefully there'll be additional funding through the EDA. The representative...
We tend to focus on the wireless broadband, which I am in favor of too, but cell phone service in our rural areas.
Oh, sure.
When you leave Arlington, it's a no person's land.
Yeah.
So I keep hearing about wireless
Yeah.
broadband, which we all need too, but cell phone service is really
Cell phone
the other,
services, yeah. No,
is the other big area.
It is, and I mean, that's just as important, and it's pretty complicated. It's like the fellow I was meeting with yesterday had information on cell coverage from all 6 different providers that operate in Vermont. So it's one thing to say you have cell phone coverage everywhere in Vermont. It's another thing to say that you've got cell phone coverage for every provider, because people have different services. So like where I live, there's Verizon does not have a usable signal, so I have to have AT&T. So, but if I have my AT&T and I drive somewhere in Vermont that has good Verizon service, it doesn't do me any
Right.
good. So I wish I were
Yeah, I know.
better, had a better answer, but I
know.
probably have as good an answer as the various governors who've been trying to solve that problem. Yeah.
On the same turn, from what I understand, I'm no expert, if you have a cell phone service, then you can get a hotspot for your
Right.
cell phone. And so anybody that really needs internet can just get a hotspot for their cell phone. So wouldn't it be more important to put the emphasis on getting better cell phone service?
Yeah, well, I think, that's the relationship. It's a cell phone service that would deliver the 4G data services too. And hopefully those can be deployed together. Yeah, right.
I'll
Yep.
just make another comment in regards to that. cell service. I live out in the hollow, as most people know, and a couple of years ago, I was able to get DSL out there. And I got whatever that thing is you get, so my cell phone would work out there. But when the power goes out and that phone service goes down, I don't have cell service. And the problem becomes an emergency. I have no way to contact anybody. And to me, that's a priority. I mean, if we're gonna have a 911 address and I can't call 911, that's an issue. But anyway.
No, I mean, that's important, and there's a FirstNet proposal that I don't know that much about, but they're talking about, within the next 12 to 24 months, deploying at least, I think, 34 additional towers to cover areas to make sure that emergency service providers can be contacted from everywhere. That's kind of their first priority.
Got some land that could pop one on it.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, when I've been working 30 plus years at the Regional Commission, and I remember not that long ago, maybe 15 years ago, that people were fighting cell towers pretty aggressively, keep them out, keep them away, and now people are like, could you put one like right there, please? So times change. Anything else? Questions?
What's road bowling? You asked it.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, no, that's what a few of us do that. It's an old Irish sport. It's got Irish road bowling, and it's not complicated. You have these like 2-pound cannonballs, and you roll them down the road, and the person that gets to the finish line the fewest number of rolls wins. In Ireland, it involves a lot of drinking and gambling. Less so here, but it's a lot of fun. It's a lot cheaper than golf. Yeah. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.